We good?
Yep. Just let me go live for real.
Mm.
Ba, 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 ba. We appear to be live. It's Monday, April 12th, 2021. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geek Nights. Tonight we are talking about laptops and tablets. All right. Lay it on me.
All right, so since I'm working at home, I got this desk layout that I've been, pretty okay with for the whole time, where I got my left monitor, I got my right monitor. They're both on my desktop, right? But, they're Dell Ultra Sharps. They got all kinds of connectors.
Yep.
You can do picture-in-picture. You can do all sorts of nonsense. So what I do is I got my work laptop over here on the right. And then I have an HDMI cable from that into the right-hand monitor. So the right-hand monitor is getting a display port from the desktop and an HDMI from the work laptop, so I can switch it. So if it's during work days, I'll have one monitor for personal on the left and two for work on the right, and then I'll just switch it back to two personal when work is done, right? And close the work laptop. So the problem is, obviously, the work laptop, they didn't buy me that Microsoft Surface I wanted, so it has a keyboard and a trackpad that take up a bunch of desk space. But I don't want to use that keyboard and trackpad. I want to use my real mouse and keyboard no matter what. So there's this cool thing called Mouse Without Borders. It's a Microsoft product that's free.
That's a good name. That's a good name.
Yeah. If you have all Windows computers, obviously not if you have any Macs or Linux computers, but if all Windows computers, and you don't want to do a KVM thing, right? Basically, you can connect as many computers as you want with Mouse Without Borders. Obviously, these computers would be very chill with each other because you're basically giving administrator access to each other, right? So do it in a closed, secure place, right? And what happens is basically one computer has the mouse and keyboard, and when you tell it, when I move the mouse to the edge of the window, right, to the edge of the screen, it just moves right onto the other screen of the other computer, and it's like they were the same computer. And then the keyboard will send its key presses to whichever computer the mouse is currently going to, right? So it's pretty good because I can just use this one mouse and keyboard, control two computers as if they were one computer with three screens, do my work, do my personal stuff. It's very convenient. It works great.
Yeah.
It's not 100% perfect, but it is 99% perfect.
The solution I used back when I lived in a house when we were in Beacon was I just had two sets of keyboards and mice that were both great on a gigantic desk.
Yeah, but I don't want to move, even though my anyway.
Well, I had the gigantic L, the L desk, the luxury that you don't want to have in a New York City apartment.
And plus, you can copy and paste from one to the other.
Yeah,
all kinds. You can, you can't drag a window, but you can.
I think the problem is I would just try to drag windows all the time.
Yeah,
I think that would happen.
I haven't had that problem. So anyway, obviously the way this works is over the network, right? Obvious. So, being on a LAN here, it's not a problem. It's super speedy. If you tried to do this over a not LAN, it might be an issue. Right? The work laptop is on Wi-Fi. The desktop is plugged in with an Ethernet cable to the router.
Oh, direct to the router. I got nothing plugged directly into my router except two switches.
No, I'm using up all the ports on the router, all four.
I've always made it's not a thing now. Like, this is just me being old and also already having switches. But in the old days, routers, you usually would get better performance on your network if you connected all your devices to a switch and connected that to a router, because routers had a lot of weird problems and multiplexing issues in ancient times.
The router has a switch in it. It's the same fucking
that
thing.
is not a thing anymore. You can just plug everything into a router. You only need a switch if you have a big network.
Right. So, what I've noticed, right? And this is how I know I'm not losing my hearing as much as I think I might be because I'm old. I obviously lost some because I'm old, right? But haven't lost that much because I noticed when I move the mouse over, because the mouse is directly connected to my desktop, right? My personal one. When the mouse goes over to the work computer, I can hear in my left ear this high-pitched noise, like dee-dee-dee-dee, kind of like sort of ish, right? Almost like a scratching, like a high-pitched scratching, like almost like there's a modem in the other room making a phone call, something like that, right? And I hear the noise when I move the mouse on the other screen. If I don't move the mouse, there's no noise. But like if I move the mouse, I can hear it go like as I'm moving it, and it
Ooh,
stops immediately.
So
And I have confirmed with people that mouse without borders, absolutely. When you move the mouse on a non-local computer, when you move the mouse cursor, it basically sends a huge burst of very small packets. So it's almost definitely, right? The noise is coming from the router, which is to the left of me, right? So this burst of like a many tiny packets going from my desktop to the laptop is making this noise. Clearly, there is no other
but
explanation.
is the noise
for it.
coming from the router?
Yes, it's coming from the router. So,
Because when I had that happen, I had a very similar thing happen, like spookily, but it was on a laptop. It was actually on my old Fujitsu Lifebook. But what would happen was if the room was really quiet and I moved the mouse using the trackpad, I could hear a very tiny electrical noise that came out of the speakers that coincided with every pixel the mouse moved.
this isn't that. So, I'm pretty sure right now, if I'm wrong, I might be about to waste some money.
I mean, you could solve this. Just do a PCAP and like see what's going on. Are there retransmissions or something? Like,
oh no, it's working as function. Mouse without borders. When you move the mouse on a non-remote computer, especially a high DPI mouse, it sends lots and lots of small packets quickly. And it's doesn't matter if they're being lost or retried or whatever. There's a lot of them. It's supposed to be sending a lot of them, so you have good mouse resolution.
Yep, because that whole product, because to your point, that whole product would be literally worthless if there was any amount of perceptible lag in the mouse.
It feels like you're using the mouse locally, right? You have no idea.
Except now I have flashbacks to when you could put like old Quake games in LAN mode where it would assume you were on a fast network and just send a lot more telemetry.
The point is, if I just send a lot of packets to the router and a lot of really tiny ones to the router, it makes a noise, right? So the question is the noise coming from in the router hardware, right? Because there's no moving parts.
Yeah.
Is it coming from just
the burst of Wi-Fi is what I would guess.
Ethernet cable side or the Wi-Fi side? And my guess, what you said is my same guess. I feel it's coming from the radio side.
Yep.
Right? So my thinking, because like I said, my router is all full up of cables. There's all 4 holes are filled. I got to get a switch to add more holes. If I get a switch and plug the laptop into that switch instead of into, instead of using Wi-Fi on the laptop, that should be, I guess, maybe improve network performance a tiny bit. Not noticeable for anything I do on the work laptop, but maybe make the noise go away.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I like
nice.
I like having a fully switched wired network in the house anyway, just for things like, especially if I have devices hitting the NAS.
Wired network in the house.
Except you're also connecting some things by Wi-Fi. Only phones get
they're
Wi-Fi.
far away.
Yeah,
or their phones.
Or actually, there's other than our phones and like tablets, the only thing that's on the Wi-Fi normally is the printer. That way I can just put it in a different room and not worry about it. I wasn't going to run a cable to
my printer, it connects with a USB cable to the NAS, which is a print server.
I got a fancy office like color laser printer. Which is now too big to fit in the spot I used to be putting it in when I rearranged the room. So it's in a temporary home. It's a printer that's really big on a table that's too small for it, and it's really funny looking.
I just think about getting a switch. Maybe it will, even though I only need one more hole. That's really annoying. I got to get like a 5-port switch to add one more hole, right?
I mean, at that point, just get it.
Things will be plugged into the switch.
At that point, I don't know, get a 16-port just in case. Like the incremental cost is basically zero.
There's nowhere to put that.
I just got to mount it on my desk.
I'm not putting it on my desk. But hopefully that will make the noise go away. Of course, it's such a minor noise, like it only bothers me. I don't know if anyone else could even hear it.
I mean, one thing I know is that I'm still the kind of person, though I haven't tested this a lot lately because COVID, like I don't go anywhere. If someone somehow has a CRT and turns it on anywhere within like 100 yards of me, I'm just like, there it is. Over there, someone turned on a TV.
I got rid of the CRT from my Apple II GS, and I got a video card, basically an HDMI output card that goes in there. Less authentic, but
way more convenient.
Yeah, it takes up a lot less room.
I was curating some old photos and looking for stuff, and I found a photo of my desk from like Beacon. And even that late, I had a gigantic CRT on that desk. You can see the desk like bowing down in the middle under the weight.
To Beacon in 2005, we bought a TV, and it was not an LCD TV.
Well, I got some fun things. I pulled up the dates prices and specs of every laptop I've ever owned for part of the show. It's I feel really old today looking at those specs because I remember how excited I was for that Fujitsu Life book.
Yeah, it was good.
It was good. I bought it because you had the previous version that was great, and our friend Steve had a Fujitsu.
Well, the one you bought was less great. It
was less great because you couldn't replace the optical drive with the with just extra battery like you could.
Yeah, you didn't have these special tiny ones.
Yeah, because I didn't need the optical drive most of the time. You know what I needed? More battery.
Yep.
Anyway, so in the news, it's sad to say this happens a lot. The news is that it's happening again, and it's happening relatively quickly. But capitalism destroys data. Like, that is a problem that has not been dealt with yet. And archive.org and there's a lot of places that really try to protect this data, but the Library of Alexandria is about to be burned down. Yahoo Answers is being destroyed forever on May 4th, which is not that long from now.
Yeah, even a platform that is not great, not...
Humans made data. They made complexity. That data is a non-zero value, and the incremental cost of storing it for the future is basically zero.
Yep. But, keeping the service online, maintaining it in the future, right?
Yeah.
It means, you had to defend, you had to provide for security.
Yeah.
You had to provide.
Well, look, Scott and I we had to do work to make the old GeekNights forum continue to exist online. And even now it actually has the problems that someday we got to fix. You can't search it easily. The search just doesn't work. There's errors if you try to use the search.
Oh, great.
It's been that way for 5 years, so don't sweat it too much.
The point is, keeping stuff online, right, is work. It costs money. If you're not making money from it and you're a capitalist enterprise,
yep,
you just shut it down. It's real easy. Now you don't have to worry about it anymore. It's the easiest thing, but you are now denying that to the rest of the world. And yeah, you could just take a backup of the data and release that, right? So that, okay, whoever wants to back this up, here you go. Here's our backups. But that requires work, right? That you're not going to make any profit from doing that work of cleaning up the data, removing data that you shouldn't be, sending out there, privacy, security, etc., right?
Yep. But Yahoo Answers in particular is it's another one. We say this a lot on Geek Nights. I even say that we say this a lot on Geek Nights a lot. But there used to be more websites. Yahoo Answers was one of those websites in that it wasn't quite a forum, but it also wasn't one of the modern Web 2.0 or post-Web 2.0 internet experiences. It was its own thing. And there really wasn't anything else like it. This was 16 years ago they made this thing. And
now you got things like stupid Quora and
and they all serve different purposes.
Stack Overflow,
but something was lost when the internet by and large rejected forums, and I don't know if we'll ever see what forums were come back. I think we'll see forums and echoes. But anyway, that's a broader topic. Yahoo Answers. On one hand, I've noticed a lot of people were making a point that Yahoo Answers was always terrible and pretty much universally gave bad advice.
Yes.
Yahoo Answers was
it doesn't matter what even if the content, right, is horrible, shitty content, right? The worst possible content. That doesn't mean it needs to be broadcast around the world, right?
But don't just destroy it like tears in the rain.
Any work that humans have made, no matter how awful, is just worthy of mere preservation, right? And archival. That's all by a minimum, right? It might not be worthy of anything fucking else, right? So, for example, what's the worst thing? A Nazi newspaper, right? Worthy of archival and nothing else, right? Put it in some sort of vault.
So you can research it.
Someone needs to research or reference the Nazi newspaper. We fucking have it, right? Should you be printing more copies of it? Fuck no.
Yep.
Should you be advertising it? Should you be no, right? Tweeting out links to it? No, right? But we should have it, right? Somewhere, the same way we have vaults for seeds and DNA.
Yep.
Right? It's have the fucking Yahoo Answers in a vault. It's better than Nazi newspaper, so it's also worthy of archival.
So shutting down Yahoo Answers actually brings up a more like a moderately complex take on that, beyond just should they save the data or not. Like, we agree we got to save this data regardless. So one thing that happens with services like that are a little bit older is they tend to get overrun with right-wing conspiracy theories, anti-vax, and like just evil nonsense.
Yeah,
like,
and when you have something old but it's still active, and that's why we put our old forum into our no read-only.
Yeah, I'm not going to moderate that old forum, and if we didn't moderate it and you could post, Nazi shit would start appearing.
When you have an active, like, lively community space online, there's not only people putting out content, but there's people watching it, right? But if you have an old space, like an untended garden, weeds will grow. And you have to, if you're not going to tend the garden, you need to freeze the garden.
Because otherwise the garden is going to break out of its boundaries and hurt some people.
Right. So Yahoo Answers was a case, like many others, where it was an untended garden that was not frozen and thus filled with many weeds. If you did make a backup of it today somehow, you would find a lot of garbage that, if it had.
I feel like everything posted to Yahoo Answers since 2015 is probably suspect.
Yeah, if you had frozen it at the right time, then it would have been a more valuable archive, right? Or source of whatever, right? But now it is tainted. Like, if you just have an email box and you turn off your spam filter and you wait a year, it's like, well, yeah, you can back up your email now, but now it's a lot shittier backup because it's full of all these spams. I guess it's still, worthy of backup. Some human made those spams. They're worthy of archival. But,
but the other fascinating thing about Yahoo Answers is a lot of you are probably too young to have ever actually looked at it or used it. And even the memes around it have largely disappeared and are things old people reference.
Pretty much how is Babby formed is the one.
Yep. Or how does woman get pregnant?
Yeah, those are the two.
There's a great compilation, I'll even link to it, where someone compiled just hundreds of all the ways people very poorly asked how they could get pregnant and how pregnancy worked. It is the thing that always fascinated me about Yahoo Answers, because even when it was live and a part of the social fabric, I definitely always looked down on it, and it always made me cynical about humanity. But I'm less cynical about it now because this is the spectrum of humanity. But people would, instead of just typing something into Google or even Yahoo and seeing answers, would ask questions in Yahoo Answers that should have been answered by their parents, society, or typing what they just typed into Google or Yahoo. And yet instead...
How much of Reddit, at least half of Reddit, is people asking a question that is answered by a Google search or another post in that exact same Reddit where they just asked the question?
Now, I saw someone pushing back against this narrative.
Stack Overflow and associated sites, right, solve this in a way where if you are typing in a question, right, if there are similar questions, it brings them up. The question box is a search box. And if you insist on posting your question again, even though it has been posted, people swiftly come and delete it and tell you it's been answered elsewhere.
But I saw a pushback on this.
Sort of hurts community, but and makes people feel bad and whatnot. It doesn't help them, right? But there's a reason people are doing that. They want to talk to someone. They don't care if they could get the information.
Well,
right?
because on one case, with a place like that, what are you making? Because a community could be a social thing, or a community could be a means to answering questions specifically.
Right. When someone just wants the information, they're not going to ask. People who are asking not just because they want the information, but because they just want to talk to somebody, right? There's an additional thing there, right? So, and that's, saying, let me Google that for you only gives them half of what they're looking for. They're looking for some sort of human contact.
Yep.
Right. Without saying so.
Well, the other thing I've seen a lot of
using the Stack Overflow solution, right, helps make a better website with better answers for other people who are just looking for information. But it doesn't help your community. It pushes a lot of people away because they're trying to connect with other humans.
Yep.
And you're saying, no, stop doing that.
But it's fascinating.
Got information.
Because there's a lot of things, especially on the internet, that aren't intended to help humans connect to humans so much as to serve some other task. But people are lonely and desperate and end up seeking humanity even in those places where they don't really accommodate that in any meaningful way.
Meanwhile, Facebook would be the opposite, which is we just, that's even what Facebook will say is we want to connect people, right? They just want to help people connect to people. They don't care about the information or what people are saying to each other.
And that doesn't work either, because if people are just talking to each other,
people who are just desperate or want to seek some sort of human connection, Facebook is like, here, all the human connection you want. Can you feel like you're with other people? Togetherness, right? I don't care what the hell you're saying to each other. I don't care what information you're spreading. I'm just going to give you that feeling of being together and connecting with the rest of humanity through the computer as best we can. And I don't give a shit about anything else.
And I'm about to mix my metaphors, but the monkey's paw curls, and oh no, I got exactly what I asked for. But when I read, Yahoo Answers was just the questions people would ask, like that how is Babby formed, was actually indicative of how a huge percentage of the site was used. But I saw people...
How much of that was not in good faith, right? Someone just being funny and typing in how is Babby formed, right?
Yeah, but there is a huge... I found a bunch of different archives of people looking at particular types of questions on Yahoo Answers.
How many of his people English is a second language, so their question comes off silly when they're trying to,
Yeah.
There's a lot of that.
There is that. But I saw a pushback against that whole, let me Google it for you, a separate way around the idea that if someone's asking, ostensibly, they could have already Googled, but they're looking for some insight or something beyond that. They're looking for insight into which of these video switchers should I buy.
Bad at asking questions.
Yeah. But in my experience, that's usually not true. They usually just want someone to tell them, buy this one. They're not well, even worse, the people who tend to answer people who ask questions like that tend to Google and give whatever answers come up high on Google. So the people get the same experience they would have gotten Googling, except someone else paraphrases it and often introduces a mistake.
I guess it does help them avoid reading, right? If I Google for best headphones have got to be the worst one for this, right? You're going to find just so much information about best headphone, right? There's even tools to help you pick out headphones that ask you all sorts of questions, right? You're basically, when you say, hey, what headphones should I buy? Someone else is doing the research for you and just giving you the answer immediately. And whereas Googling it will require some reading, right?
Yep. You have to click on a website, make sure it's not a shady website. Maybe click on a different website, see if it says the same thing,
So you're basically there is an element there of asking a question to offload labor, if you think that learning and reading are labor.
So some other news, LG is not going to make phones anymore.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't remember. Was one of my flip phones LG? I think it was a Samsung.
I've never owned, did I? No, I don't think I've ever owned an LG phone.
Yeah, I don't know if I did.
LG is deep on my shit list for the ads in their TVs anyway, so.
Yeah, I mean, this LG monitor is good, but I don't know if I'll buy any other LG things, right?
Yeah, but it seems like they're just exiting the smartphone.
Things in the past. I guess I might buy some LG kitchen appliances, but when am I going to buy kitchen appliances?
Yeah, I own every kitchen appliance I could possibly need.
Yeah.
But
I don't even know if they make the best ones or not.
I can't ever say that LG stood out as making particularly good phones, at any point.
No, LG was sort of, the way I see it is they were in the flip phone days, right? They were sort of making these good, but sort of second best, right? It's
they weren't the Razor. They were well, I can't afford a Razor, but the LG is better than the bottom.
No, some of their phones would be more expensive, right? But it was sort of it wasn't the premier phone. It was another company that also made good phones, but not as good as the best ones, but someone bought them, right? And I think what happened was in the transition to the smartphone era, right? It's very easy to see this in hindsight, is that the Apple, in bringing out the iPhone, not only changed phones, but they changed the skill set that was required to make a phone, right? The people making phones before were people who were companies that were good at making radios, right? Because that was the important part of the phone. And then Apple was basically no, if you want to make a good phone, you have to make good software, right? And suddenly all these companies that were good at making radios were oh, fuck, we can't make one of those. We're not good at making what that is, right?
Yeah.
It's Apple's good at making what that thing is, but that thing replaces our thing, but we don't know how to make that thing.
Well, LG also, it was interesting because they later, around 2016s, they went after a market that probably doesn't exist. Remember they made that modular phone?
No.
Oh, the modular G5? It was like a modular phone. And yeah, the fact that you don't remember it, it fucking failed so hard.
Yeah.
I had to look it up to make sure I was thinking of the right thing because this article talks about it. But apparently,
all these other companies that were in the phone biz in the flip days, right, tried to transfer over to when Apple basically said, "Hey, this is what a phone is now." They tried to transfer over, and basically all the non-Apple ones were bad at software, and that's why they all, even Microsoft, right, was bad at phone software.
2016,
right?
LG's modular G5 is the most daring flagship phone ever. Here comes the era of the modular customizable smartphone.
Right, the WebOS, they were good at software. They failed for other reasons.
They had the best software. In the early days of smartphones, WebOS was like, it was way better.
It's still being used in some smart TVs, funnily enough.
Yeah.
And Android, it's not as good as iOS, but it was good enough to, actually, it was way better than all those other phone softwares.
And there was a time when I would say Android, there was a brief era where Android had outpaced the user experience of iPhones, but then iPhones just leapfrogged them again.
But the point is that Android provided the opportunity for all the phone people who could make a hardware phone who couldn't make software to just have that taken care of for them, right? So an LG who isn't good at making software could make a phone and slap Android on it and maybe make a couple apps or something and customize a little bit and be good to go, right? LG would never be capable of making an Android OS, right? Ever. But it's proven over time that look, Samsung and Google make the Android phone. Maybe there's some other players too. You got your Huawei's and your, whatnots.
Sony makes actually very good Android phones.
Yeah. But it's a tough world if all these phones have the same software, right? Lenovo makes phones, I think.
And I do get the impression people who don't buy iPhones increasingly don't care that much which phone they get. They get whatever one has a promotion.
Yeah, who knows?
LG apparently still had 10% of the market when they were deciding to shut this down, though.
But yeah, if you don't have a larger percentage than that of the phone market, is it even worth it? You know?
Especially if your phones are mostly just bought by people who go to like a T-Mobile store and they point at, oh, that's the phone that you can get cheap if you get a plan.
Right. And you also have to remember, when you are LG making a phone, your money, your margins start and stop when that is on the hardware. That's it. You sell your phone and that's it. Apple sells a phone and then they get you iCloud money and they get you App Store money.
Yeah.
They get you iTunes, right? They have got you now, right? They are making big money when they sell an iPhone, right? They could sell an iPhone at a loss and be like, woo! Hooray, we sold an iPhone. That guy, whoever that is going to pass a lot, right? If you're, Samsung, they make a little bit, phone carriers, they got their own thing going on. Google, they got their Play Store money coming in when they sell a Pixel phone.
Yep.
They're doing similar to Apple Biz.
Sony has a whole ecosystem of Sony phones have spent they're actually like 99% straight Android, except it is a Sony Android where they add a few Sony specific things that work with other Sony hardware, but it's very boutique and I don't use it, but no one needs that because all the smart devices will work with pretty much any phone with an app anyway. So
point is 10% of the phone market combined with not making any money other than the margins on the hardware is not enough to stay in business, right? And actually, if they're in a downward trend, right? It's like, are you at 10% and rising? Oh, then keep at it, right? But if you're down to 10%.
So in 2020, they recorded an operational loss of $750 million a year in their smartphone division.
Right, probably because to get ahead, right, you had to probably take, shittier margins on your phones, right?
But also, that was 2020, the year where no one needed to upgrade their smartphone unless theirs broke. It's not like I'm going anywhere. This phone's getting.
What is the value add that LG adds to the phone that no one else has? Right. Well, they tried the modular thing, which didn't work, as you just pointed out. Right? I think LG. It's like, well, they make displays that are really good. That's a part that they make, right? The chips, they're buying a lot of those chips from someone else. How much money they making on that?
Well, when I think LG, I think middle of the road, generic, whatever. Like they're the middle of the road generic TV, middle of the road generic cell phone.
I mean,
This
yeah,
article
they
actually
can
points out
sell
something.
parts to other people to put in their phones and make just
Yeah.
fine money.
So I'll link to this Verge article that talks about the shutdown because it actually has an interesting tidbit. This is from, like, I'll paraphrase this because it's short, but basically, I'm not getting a lot of people saying, what will I do to replace my LG G8X ThinQ? I'm getting a lot of, my first phone was an LG flip phone. It was durable and reliable, and I loved it. Most of the chatter that journalists are seeing about LG exiting the business is about nostalgia for the old phones, and almost nobody talking about any, like, recent smartphone that LG made.
No one because no one has one.
Exactly.
Only 10% of people have one.
Yep. But it seems like the hole they're leaving in the industry is the sub $300 hole, which I think is definitely people who buy the cheapest phone that comes with whatever cell phone contract or whatever their cell phone carrier gives them a deal on as part of the upgrade package they paid for.
You are in the sub $300 phone market. You just want to buy a cheap phone that works, that'll be just fine, and you don't want to spend a lot of money, right? Go for used phone, old phone.
Get a used phone with a refurbished battery. Just make sure it has a refurb battery. That's all you need.
iPhone 7 that I just replaced, I could have not replaced it and been just fine. If they hadn't come out with a small iPhone, I would still be using an iPhone 7 right now.
Yep.
And it would still be just fine. iPhone 7 is way old already. It's like 4 or 5 years old. Yeah, 5 years old, I think, for iPhone 7. So at least, and is just fine. So if you got $300, I feel like you could definitely go out and get yourself an iPhone 8 or 9 or something. I don't know what the prices are on these.
You'd be in pretty
now.
good shape, I think.
And you could keep that thing going. If you get a new one that's like still in the box, they're out there. They're not hard to find. You can keep that shit going for quite a while, right? You get like a Pixel 3a or whatever that was just never sold when it was new. You pick it up for cheap. You can rock that thing for quite a while, right? And clearly, if you're only spending $300, you're accepting the fact that you're not getting the highest end amazing phone, but that's still a pretty great phone. It's going to be better than a brand new, phone from some weirdo brand, right? So.
All right, we went on for a half hour in the news, so I'll skip the other news. I'll save that for next Monday.
What was the other news? Oh, the Nvidia chip? Oh, okay.
Yeah, the Nvidia chip. I mean, you want to talk about it? You want to save it?
It's kind of big news, but we can...
I guess we could talk about it, because it's... you know what I'll save? I'll save that thing that we don't have to talk about right away, about the live streaming, the thing that has the camera that points at the audience.
Oh, we don't need that.
Yeah, we can skip that. I'll save that. All right, so do the Nvidia news, and then we'll go to the thing of the day.
So Nvidia had a keynote today, furthering my many-year-old, basically prediction / I called it, whatever, I told you so, right?
We got a Nostradamus here.
It's becoming, I mean, it was like obvious, right? It was like I was looking at green grass and I was saying, grass is green. I was looking at a tree with no leaves and I was saying, in the spring, that tree's going to have leaves.
He's a witch.
Yeah, right? I bet you tomorrow these buds are going to turn to leaves. No, what? Right. So Nvidia had a keynote today, and among their announcements, they announced like they got some chip they're making that's going to go in cars. That's a big deal, right? Because but the big one is they announced this ARM CPU they're making that's going to be they're targeting servers, right? They want people to run servers in their data centers with Nvidia's ARM CPUs in them, and it's to further put pressure on the x86. And basically, I'm just saying, I'm always talking about this. How you're going to have the all NVIDIA computer. It's coming. Look at what Apple's doing with the M1.
Yep.
Right? NVIDIA's going to be pushing that on the PC side, right? They're just hitting. It's hard to hit the desktop without Microsoft, getting Windows to run on ARM properly, which there is a Windows ARM, it runs. It's getting better. But they'll just be like, okay, well, Linux runs on this just fine. We'll hit that data center, right? Soon enough, you'll be seeing like an all NVIDIA laptop or some shit that runs Linux for some nerds to buy or who knows what. This is a thing, right? Get ready for, Intel has been taking a beating. They're trying to push back a little bit. You're seeing a little bit of life in the Intel, which is, never died, right? So
like the 11th gen Intel CPUs ain't bad.
I don't know if Intel will die. They're showing some signs of life, trying to fight back against, AMD and whatnot. x86 is showing, not too many signs of life, but it's still going. But here, Nvidia, here it is, right? The pressure that I said was coming is now today announced. Even more pressure.
Data center is real important too, because unlike like desktop and gaming, where there's a lot of different apps people use, you could sell chips that are not backward compatible at all, because people who care about performance might be doing something novel enough to where they're just going to write code that'll work natively on that chip. Like they're not going to.
Most things that run in a data center run in a virtual machine of some kind or a container of some kind. So you don't really give a shit what the actual CPU architecture is in the data center, because you install like one layer of operating system on top of that. And then everything else, the actual applications people are running, are not hitting that layer directly, and they don't care, right? It's going to work.
Yep.
You know,
or
your data center could move your machine from an x86 Intel machine to an Nvidia ARM machine, and you wouldn't know.
Now, the things that will hit, well, sometimes, again, depending on the cases, that will hit that hardware directly are things like big AI things, machine learning stuff, specialized stuff.
They're coding that stuff from scratch every time.
Yep. They're not going to run the code from 5 years ago. They're going to write new code.
They write the code knowing what the chips are going to be, right? So if Nvidia is like, hey, we're going to have these chips for you, someone will be like, oh, are those going to give me more performance for less money and less power and make my data center better and whatnot? I'm building a data center. I'm buying what's best at the time, and I'm getting my application, building it for what I'm going to buy, right?
Yep.
So you're not saying, oh, I have x86, so I guess I better write it for that. It's like, that's not how that works in that market. So
yeah, that market is a market that a lot of people don't interact with directly and wouldn't see that.
And once you get your foothold in there, well, that's how you got to branch out, right?
Yep. I feel like in the long run, Intel might continue to compete on desktop, end user, retail type stuff, partly only because performance is not actually a concern for that market, except in rare gamer cases.
Well, there are other things, though. Battery life to compete on.
Yep.
Right?
Mobile. We'll talk about that in the main bit, because mobile is an interesting space, because while that stuff all matters, people are increasingly just moving to like pure tablet, like already not x86. Like that trend has already been happening.
And you think performance is not a selling point, but then you see something like that M1 where it's like, yeah, performance isn't a selling point until it's so much more performance that it can't be denied.
I'm still curious to see games and things running on an M1 with a high degree of performance, considering the lack of GPUs we can put in those devices right now. But anyway, things of the day. So check this out. This is a YouTube video. It is 4 minutes and 21 seconds long. This is, as far as we know, the first film with a narrative ever made in Japan in 1899. Momijigari. It was the story behind it's fascinating. I learned about it recently, but this is the whole thing on YouTube. It's actually preserved relatively well considering. But basically, it was a recording of a performance of two extremely famous actors who were doing stage plays, and they recorded this scene on film as a record for the future, not to be screened in theaters. Like, this was not something they intended to show anyone. This was intended to be stored and archived so that in a distant future, people could see, like, these famous actors acting. Like, that was, this was the early era of film. Like, that made sense. However, one of the actors died, not too long after this was filmed. So they ended up screening it, and it was in 1904, I want to say. Like, the story behind this film is amazing, but it's just on YouTube. You can watch it. It's short. You can just read a script for what happened. It's a silent film, so there's only like a couple of title cards of Japanese that you could just read, and this is pretty cool.
So we talked about archival, right? Well, archiving software, archiving data. But one thing that's a lot harder to archive is hardware, right? So a lot of old computers, old hardwares, we got emulators and things like that, so we'll never really lose, the truth, right? But sometimes stuff, we want to have at least a few of the original real deal, right?
Well, especially when you find an edge case. Remember we went to that talk about the guy making emulators, and he was like, yeah, you find this crazy edge case and you got to go look at the hardware to figure out what the hell it was doing, and you never encountered it in your code path before.
Exactly. It's not in the documentation. It's not anywhere, right? But it's real, and some software depends on it or something.
Yeah.
So, one problem as someone who has recently been doing some stuff with some old devices like a GBA, Apple II, Mac Plus over here, right? It's like you sort of realize, like, if this breaks, right, and I can't fix it and I can't get a replacement part for it, that's one less of those in the world, and no one's making more, right? So make sure they're in good hands wherever they are. So what we have here is somebody with a Mac SE30. So a Mac SE30 is a really interesting Mac because there was the Mac 512K, right? There was the Lisa, the Mac 512K, the Mac Plus, which is what I have. And then the SE30 came after the Mac Plus, and it's very similar, except it had like you could get one with an internal hard drive. That was like and it was faster and such. But that was really the big differentiator between that and the Mac Plus, right? The Mac Plus, which came out in '86, could actually run Mac OS all the way up through like the mid '90s. Like it was a very long-lived computer. But the SE30 was a little, almost as amazing, right? Because that internal hard drive, you don't have to use an external one. So that's like if you want to get an old Mac and sort of like hit that sweet spot of old vintageness, but also convenience, right? The SE30 is like it's right there, right? With that internal hard drive action. So we have here is a person who, I don't know if they had a broken one or if they just did this for fun, but they're like, hey, if, I have a Mac SE30, right? If this breaks, there's no replacing it, right? It's getting, some parts you could maybe replace, like, maybe some certain chips you could maybe get somewhere, from somebody. Or I was able to buy RAM for my Mac Plus very easily, right? I was able to get a battery for certain things, but the CRT breaks, it's like, that's it. You're not getting another one of those, right? That's the end. And if the motherboard breaks, that's it. Right? It's like, even if all the chips are in perfect condition, like if the board itself, the circuit board is broken, like you're done, right? It's like, can't get another one.
Yep. And a circuit board, a motherboard is not as simple. If you look at one, you think, oh, you can see all the lines, just like replicator from a photo. Motherboards are layered. There's layers in there.
Yeah, you can't.
There's a lot of layers.
Amazingly, I guess reverse engineered or, figured out from who knows what, but they basically, built up the schematic for the motherboard of the Mac SE30. And if you, can create the design, you can have circuit boards made very easily today. They had a circuit board made.
Yep.
And sure enough, they put all the chips on it from another board, and it fucking worked. They made a Mac SE30 motherboard, which means now if anyone's Mac SE30 motherboard breaks, okay, you can't get an original one, but you can have one made that, as far as we can tell, is identical. You just need enough chips to fill it up. So that's pretty awesome. I hope that more people do this for other motherboards of other devices. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah, and the story, like the thread, they document this in pretty good detail. Like, this is a fun read, even if you have no idea what they're talking about.
Mm-hmm. It'd be like, hey, they're not making Model Ts anymore, but I figured out how to make one, and I made one.
I did get to ride in a Model T once.
It's not that exciting.
Nah. But so get this. This was a Model T this was actually in the year 1996. We bought a house, like my family, and the person who lived there, she was an old lady, and she was leaving, and she owned a Model T. That was her only car, and she literally used it daily.
Mm-hmm.
So she was like, do you want to go for a ride? And she took us for a ride in it, and it had a few like modifications to make it work better, but it was a Model T, like straight up. It didn't go that fast, and it was a fascinating ride. It was not comfortable.
No, it's also dangerous. I've said that already, but I'll say it again.
Yep.
Dangerous.
In the meta moment, we just talked about the first Japanese film. Well, we're also reading together the first Japanese novel, which happens to also be the first novel. Full stop.
Think about it. That's something we haven't pointed out. Japanese people invented the novel. Right? So every novel you read, right, even if it's written by someone else who's not Japanese, can be considered, right, a Japanese invention, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So if you want to read it along with us, the only advice I have for you is if you get hung up on trying to figure out 100% of what happened in a given like short chapter, honestly, just let it wash over you, and you'll figure out the gaps that you didn't quite get from the implied language pretty quickly. And the things you don't figure out.
Right, reading something over and over again that's confusing because it's in this ancient language, old language. Won't help you understand it better. At least for me, reading ahead, keep going, and it will make it easier to understand.
Read it like you're reading it for fun. Don't read it like it's an assignment in 10th grade literature class.
Yeah.
That's my advice. And you'll see that Genji just kind of flits. He just he moves from place to place, causing small amounts of trouble and not really learning lessons. And
Yep. It's a tale of Genji.
Yep. Just Genji doing his thing. Otherwise, we have GeekNights has an expansive online community and online presence, and we encourage you to check out all those places. But if you check out one place, other than I guess whatever you're using to listen to this or watch this right now, check out our Discord and our forum, because that's where a good chunk of our community is. But there's other places too, and you can find them all by typing the word GeekNights into Google and following links.
And I asked people, are there any places we aren't that we should be? And no one had any really good ideas, but I'm still open to ideas.
Yeah.
And also I think we have cataloged a list of all the places that we are. So I'm going to make like a little resource so that you can go to one place and maybe like that card website or something similar to it. And that
but that place will then become a new place.
It will become a new place. But I'll make a place, maybe just on our website, a page. Who knows?
Yeah.
Something where you can go there and there'll be links to every place that GeekNights exists. And that way you can find them all very easily and we won't have to list them. We can just send you to that one place. Be like, it's sort of like the GeekNights small directory map thing. I'm going to make that pretty soon because it won't take very long at all. So look out for that.
All right. So we've talked about like various parts of computers and things. And we've talked about like some adjacent topics to this in an ancient past.
We did shows on both of these things in the past. We did a tablet show and a laptop show. I think we've done several laptop shows, in fact, maybe.
So actually, I can pull that list up right now in detail.
Because things changed over time, so we did like an update show.
So we did a show on HTPCs, and I want to say 2011. Nothing's changed. Like HTPCs, like
very little has changed.
Our advice now is the same as then. HTPCs are better than any other option on a TV for almost all use cases.
Assuming you can afford it, yes.
But the last time we talked about laptops, we actually even called the show, which is in 2008, we did a show called How to Buy a Laptop. Do not follow the advice there. In 2012, we did a show called Laptops in 2012, because between 2008 and 2012, which was literally 4 years, the world of laptops changed so much that almost everything we said in the previous episode was 100% obsolete.
Mm-hmm.
And now laptops are in a really not weird, but interesting space, because they are less used by pretty much most people who do not have one for their work. And most people who have one for their work, it replaced their work desktop. So laptops are kind of a different space from what they were before.
Yeah, originally the laptop was, I have a desktop computer that I do these things with.
Yep.
I want to be able to do these things when I am not at a desk in my house. I want to be able to do this on a plane, on a boat, on a car.
Now, when I was in high school,
not while driving, right?
When I was in high school, that is an insane idea. That is not something that was even like remotely possible for me.
I mean, there were lots of portable computers, even going back, right? There were like, it was the first Mac one, right? I forget.
Yeah.
Like
I had. I wish I still had it. I gave it back because
when the iMac came out, there was the fruity laptop one, right?
Yeah.
It was the fruity iMac portable one.
I had a 386 laptop that I used when I worked at IBM.
Yeah, the Lenovo, the IBM ThinkPad, right? Just IBM laptops in general. They go way back. There were still, even in the, the 80s, maybe, early 90s, there were like these big ones you'd like, open up, right? They had really shitty monitors, and they were
No,
really
that's
limited.
the laptop I had was a 386. It was about the size of my HTPC, but you could put it like you could sit down with it, and a little monitor popped out at the top as well as those orange phosphor displays, and it had a token ring thing and a modem in it, and it was a 386 laptop. It did about what you'd expect, not much.
Yeah,
But
if you could look on this history of laptops on Wikipedia, right, it shows you all sorts of amazing old, machines of various
yep,
kinds, right? But like, the first thing you really see that like is really good. Let's see here, Apple and IBM, late '89, right? Apple's Mac Portable, right?
yeah,
IBM PS2 Note in '91, Apple PowerBook '91, IBM ThinkPad '92. Those are the ones that started to become actually
yep.
laptop as we think about laptop.
They
right?
were
And
big, they were expensive. The batteries really didn't last. Like you had to plug them in.
the
Pretty-
screens sucked. They had weird peripherals.
Yep.
The keyboards were good
But-
and bad.
Remember, this was an era when no one had smartphones and tablets couldn't be made. Like there weren't tablets. Tablets were a.
Wi-Fi necessarily, so you would have the only way these things would ever network is if you plugged them in with a cable.
My first laptop that wasn't from work that I bought for myself, which I bought while we were doing Geek Nights. I bought it when we lived in Beacon. It had a port on the side to plug an RJ11 in to plug it into a phone line because it had a modem built in.
All right, we ended up doing laptop history here.
Yeah, but basically, laptops grew massively in importance because people needed to do computing tasks when they weren't in like their home or office. So a lot of people had laptops, even if they were not necessarily nerds, technologists, or hobbyists. People were using them to just do daily life things.
Especially companies, because when your most officey jobs did not need high performance multimedia computers. They just needed word processing, spreadsheeting computers, which even crappier older laptops were very, very capable of doing that.
Yeah.
And so you would just give those out to your employees instead of, that way not everyone has offices with desktops in them.
Most of what I did with laptops back then was not connected to any sort of network. I was like writing a document in Word.
If someone's laptop is broken at your office, okay, swap them, right? It's like, they're just like perfect for everything, businessy, right? So what happened was over time, as laptops improved, people who didn't need the ultra power even at home, right, would not have a desktop at all. They would just have laptop only. How many people just have like a MacBook and that's it, right? That's their thing, right? And then what happened is people who didn't even need keyboard mouse type action, right? They were just, doing a web browsy email-y. Now they can get an iPad, or even Android tablets are even more popular than you realize. They're out there.
Yeah.
Or they just use their phone for everything and they have a big phone, or they use their phone for everything and they have a small phone.
Yep. Oh, there's a reason why a lot of people have phablets, like a tablet-looking laptop with a SIM card in it, basically.
Yeah. Like people don't even need anything anymore, right? So the laptop is in this weird space now of, it's like if you don't need the desktop and your phone doesn't do everything you need to do, that's where the laptop comes into play, the tablet comes into play.
Yep. Like most people do not need laptops unless their work gives them one.
And the gaming laptop occupies this weird space of like, you do need it, but you have no room. So you're willing to pay for this thing that's sort of ridiculous and doesn't make a lot of sense.
Or I've noticed
for a very small number of people, it makes a whole lot of sense.
Yep. A lot of people who use gaming laptops, I think, use them for a very specific purpose. They use it like a portable computer. They're not like using it on the plane. Like it is just a very portable, compact computer that they bring to like a tournament to play on their own hardware.
Yeah, or they just don't have a lot of room in their house.
Yep.
So, they just buy this gaming laptop and then,
it's an all-in-one package.
Play games.
Before the coins ruined everything, you just buy external video cards for those things too.
I don't know how many people actually use those.
A shocking number of people use them. Good Lord. Have I talked about those a lot with coworkers recently? Kids are really obsessed with them. Kids today, like I've learned this kind of recently, like kids who are like 11, 12, 13 right now, they all want gaming laptops. They think desktop gaming is stupid. They want a gaming laptop and a gigantic external video card. I don't know why, but they all want the exact same thing. It's a niche that I've encountered among like literally 3 different coworkers' kids over the past 2 weeks. Because they all come to me like, oh yeah, you know about this stuff. Where can I get an external video card? And I was like, nowhere. You're fucked. There's just no way to buy one.
Also, why would you want one? It's like
Yep.
just better to get a desktop computer.
But so now, like, I personally do need a laptop. So I recently, like in 2019, right before COVID, I bought a brand new Surface Laptop 3. And I feel like the two kinds of laptops that exist in the world now are either it's the cheapest possible Chromebook, probably because the school gave it to you, or you just needed like the bare minimum device.
I fucking love Chromebooks. You have no idea. If you haven't been in a school because you're an adult recently, like Chromebooks are huge in schools. Chrome OS is like enormous.
Chrome OS has overtaken everything but Windows, I think, last I checked, for desktop use.
In terms of desktop operating systems, yes, Chrome OS is more popular than OS X in terms of like install base as of like right now. Not even joking. Like there's more Chromebooks out there than there are Mac OS computers.
And part of that, I think, is that the cheapest possible laptop ends up being cheaper than a crappy tablet because it comes with like the keyboard and mouse built in, and it like you can sit with it and type, and
almost everything. It does everything a person wants to do in their Chrome. It's like that's all you're using if you have a computer anyway. So what does it matter? Yeah.
And then you have people like us where like I need a very powerful laptop because I do things like play high-res videos and record streams, or even actually live stream like from a convention. Like I'm editing video on my laptop sometimes. Like I needed a powerful, portable, compact device that I do primary tasks on that no tablet can do.
I mean, for me, I had the laptop, right? And then I got the iPad mini originally, years ago, right? And when I got the iPad mini, right, it was like, my idea was like, hey, I'm sitting in bed here using this laptop, right? I still needed the laptop for going to a convention or doing other things, right? But I was like, it sort of sucks to use the laptop for most of the time when I was using it was like in bed, because if I'm not in my bed, I can use the desktop. Right? And it sucked to sit there with this keyboard, right? When most of the time, what am I doing in bed? Watching a YouTube video?
Yeah.
So I got the tiniest iPad, and I was like, this replaces a Kindle, and it's better than the laptop when I'm in bed, and I'll just have the laptop, and I'll use it only for the things the little tiny iPad can't do. But then over time, people always seem to I think tech people still scoff at this idea that like iPad is as good as laptop. It's like, it's like,
unless you're doing something specialized, it really isn't.
It like the iPad Pro, I have the iPad Pro instead of the tiny iPad or the laptop now. And yeah, the iPad Pro does do everything a laptop does. There is like, I can't even think of something I want to do that I can't do with the iPad Pro. The only thing I can't do with the iPad Pro that I want to do with it is write software that runs on an iPad. If I have Xcode for iPad Pro, that's it. The end, right? There is nothing. It's super powerful. It's more powerful than just about any laptop I could get, right?
So I guess for me, because you know what I use my laptop for? The reason I can't use an iPad, I travel a lot. Well, pre-COVID. We'll get to how COVID even messed the situation up even more. I would travel a lot, and I'd be like away from home with a lot of flights and a lot of time in hotels for like weeks at a time. So I wanted something that would run Windows so I could play any Steam game I own. Like I could just play Overwatch if I wanted to.
The iPad Pro does have you could run the Steam Link in Steam Stream.
Steam Stream from what?
Your home computer.
My home computer while I'm in like Singapore in a hotel or on an Amtrak.
Civilization 6 is just on iOS.
Yeah, that wasn't the case before. That's recent.
But the point is, a lot of the games that you want to play, right, are just on iOS.
Yeah, but a lot of the ones I want to play are not. Most of them are not on iOS.
Like what? Slay the Spire?
Radio Commander?
Maybe it's. I don't know. Have to look.
I don't think that's on iOS.
I'll take a look. Who knows?
I highly doubt that game is on iOS. Overwatch? Does Overwatch run on iOS? I don't think so.
No.
That's my primary game already. You're betting zero.
$5 on iOS.
Really? That's new.
Vietnam War strategy game?
Yeah. Oh, so actually though, it would be hard to play that game without a mouse. Anyway, you can plug a mouse into an iPad. But the point is, for most people, a laptop doesn't do much for them anymore. And I think laptops aren't going to die. But I don't know what the future of laptops look like. I think we're going to see
a thing for work. I think that, like I said, it's
going to be a thing for work.
It's a real computer, but it's for a job, right?
Yep.
So
Well, like arguably, like, look, when I'm traveling, I'm either traveling for Geek Nights or for my day job, and both of those, the laptop, I only need the laptop because I have things to do for one of those two jobs. Specifically. Like, iPad, I think would have trouble live streaming the stuff from a panel while we were also presenting the panel as like a one-stop shop on a stage at a convention. But
It can
the
do that,
iPad,
but it doesn't have a capture card.
yeah, like I can,
You have to use the camera. You have to use like the camera on it. or
yeah,
something.
I can just plug an HDMI video switcher into the laptop and it'll just work and capture the video and be fine. But again, that is a super niche case. If we didn't need it to do all that, the iPad can just also show our slides and even play videos at a convention. That'll work fine. We only don't do that because the laptop, I bring the laptop and it's easier. Scott's iPad is the backup in case my laptop breaks or something.
It can do it just fine.
Yeah. And tablets, I think most people are just going to have a phone, maybe a tablet. And I think kids will remember that they had a laptop in school because their school gave them a Chromebook. And I'll bet when kids get to college, they ditch that Chromebook and literally just have a tablet, maybe a desktop if they're a gamer.
Depends what kind of work they're doing.
Yeah.
Right? Like, could you imagine, like, if I wasn't a computer person, right? You weren't doing computer work. Maybe you were like, I don't know, some sort of like a literature student.
Yeah. If I'm not a videographer, like editing 4K video, I don't even need, and playing like super PC games. I don't need this workstation.
You could just get like, you could just live your whole life with just like iPad and that's it. Or like maybe you could buy like the, the underpowered, right? But like, the things like the MacBook Air, which are just like, oh, it weighs nothing and its performance is low, but I just need the web browser, right? I'm not a computer person. Right? It's like there's so much, it's like, that's almost luxurious. It's like, whoa, you could just have the smallest, lightest thing and not care that it's slow because you don't ever push the CPU ever in your whole life. YouTube video is the most it's ever going to work, right?
Yep.
Who cares?
And it's funny, I used to be obsessed with making my laptop as small as possible, which in the old days was really hard. Like a small laptop performed worse and cost like 3 times more than a big laptop. Like I pulled up the prices. In 2008, I spent $2,800 on a Lifebook P8010 laptop with a DVD 6X optical read-only drive. But in that era, that was my primary form of entertainment when I was traveling anywhere.
You didn't have a smartphone.
Yep, there's no smartphone.
That would accompany like a BlackBerry or something at best.
Yeah, I could like watch DVDs on that thing. I could watch pirated movies on that thing. I'd play games on that thing.
Exactly. So once the smartphone comes into the picture, that no longer needs to do that stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
Like even on a trip now, like if flying to PAX, I bring my laptop. I rarely open my laptop or turn it on that flight because I could just look at my phone or play my Switch. Like I have all these other devices that solve most of the things I would use a laptop for. I'm only bringing the laptop because I'm using it at my destination for a very specific and niche purpose.
Yeah, basically the laptop, occupied there was a big vacuum of space it occupied, and that space has been chipped away at. So the circumstances under which a laptop now makes sense are so much smaller than they ever have been. What I think makes a lot of sense, and these are really popular, and the Microsoft Surface is evidence of this, right? Is the sort of convertible laptop situation, right? Which it really sort of grows and conquers over some of that, lost space, right? It's like, oh, I see that you have a phone/tablet and therefore no longer need a laptop. Well, guess what? This is a laptop, it's a Windows PC, but guess what? It can be your tablet because the keyboard just comes right off. Yeah. Right? You don't need an iPad. You got this, right? Oh, you need to go on a plane and actually do some work. Well, guess what? You can reattach that keyboard. I am a laptop now. The iPad Pro sort of does the same thing, but this thing runs actual Windows with it, right? And it's like, oh, I see that you want to put me on your desk at work because I am your work laptop, right? But at your desk at work, you have a keyboard. Remove my keyboard and use your desk keyboard and save desk real estate. But I am now an awesome monitor that is on your desk. You only need one more monitor, right? And it's just like, there's a lot of, Lenovo makes convertibles, right? Where the keyboard flips over. There's all kinds of choices out there in that realm. And I think that's why, those make a lot of sense right now. But going in the future, what makes sense is the question.
So if you're tablets, buy what makes sense. Like iPads are just better, but Android tablets aren't that bad, and they are so cheap. Like you will be shocked.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're willing to go bottom of the barrel, you can buy those Amazon Fire tablets. They're limited in what they can do, but they cost nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's almost. I worry that them costing nothing just generates e-waste.
Yeah. So what I'm seeing in the future, right, and this goes back to my Nvidia's taking over the world situation, right, is that you'll see what's going to happen is the desktop, power, right, isn't really running away a whole lot, right? It's only in the realm of the big GPU is the desktop still king. Otherwise, the desktop can't really escape, right? Its size advantage isn't helping it anywhere except for GPUs. So every application...
There's one area, the Surface Books and high performance laptops that are small, one problem they have, they can be very fast, but because they don't have good cooling, their performance profile drops rapidly if you use them too long, use them for too much intensive stuff.
But you're looking at only in the x86 realm. If you look at the other, right, the M1 chip that Apple has come out with, that is now shockingly inexpensive for something that came out and is probably the best consumer CPU available. The prices on the MacBook Air and the MacBook and the Mac Mini that contain the M1 chip are just dropping constantly. It's holy shit. It's I don't want to buy one, but it's if you're going to give me one for what? Mac Mini, $600 now, right? The MacBook Air with the M1 is I think I saw it go down to 1,100 ish. It's even if you don't need a computer.
Yeah.
It's I got 10 computers. It's I can't, how can you not take one? It's just so much, right? It's that thing's better than most of your i7s and whatnot, right? So if the laptops keep running away in all the non-GPU realms, right, then it suddenly becomes a world where it's okay, I guess you just buy those, right?
Yeah.
But then since you're no longer really, building your computer, it's suddenly Nvidia comes with an ARM, comparable, machine, right? The Nvidia laptop, right? It's coming. It's got an ARM Nvidia chip in it. It runs Windows ARM. You don't know the difference, but it's competing on performance, right? Your desktop isn't better than it really, except for in the GPU department, and that's it. And then what? It's convertible, right? Maybe.
Yeah.
Right. So now it's oh, okay, I'll have my phone and I'll have my convertible Nvidia, right, thing that does literally everything else.
Yep.
And I only have a desktop if I'm some weirdo.
Yep. A weirdo who's videographer, modeler, developer, gamer, not many other use cases.
Even gamer could probably, you're telling me an Nvidia convertible thing isn't going to be the gaming,
I don't know.
Device.
But one thing that I don't know, because right now games still, video cards are still progressing rapidly, partly because games will use that power. They always fill that vacuum. But at some point, we got to hit a limit there. I think part of what kept that trend going was that 4K in particular, high refresh rate 4K is still beyond the capabilities of all but the most extreme GPU devices.
I mean, what's the resolution on the freaking iPad Pro? The big iPad Pro, at least.
Yeah, but is that gonna run a serious modern game in 4K at 60 FPS reliably for long periods of time?
4K resolution is 3840 by 2160.
Yep.
Right. Okay, so then an iPad Pro, the big one, is 2732 by 2048. So, not quite. It's missing 1,000 pixels in one direction.
But also, you can see this. So I have a 1080 video card in my workstation because I can't get a 3080 because you're fucking coins.
Maybe 3K, I guess.
Yeah. But basically, if I run any game at 1080p, barely touches my 1080 GPU, whatever. 4K, now it's pushing that GPU to 80% of its capacity. And that's for an older game running in 4K 30. I can't run a lot of games in 4K 60 with a 1080 right now. But because the sheer amount of additional processing power you need to drive 4K displays at high resolutions, I think has caused it keeps desktops for these performance use cases, especially gaming, viable for the foreseeable future. But I think there will be a future generation where, all right, now everything's running 8K and we literally won't make more Ks after that. But yeah, the moral of all this is if you're going to buy a laptop, like honestly, think long and hard about what you're actually going to ever do with it. Because if you're not doing something weird, you probably don't need a laptop, or you can get the cheapest Chromebook. They cost like almost nothing.
I just see in the future that, like, you know, what the desktop is now of this thing that only certain people need.
Laptop will be that.
The laptop will be that. The desktop will become like this even more weird thing.
The desktop will be the thing that most people go to an office where there is the workstation. You know, desktops are rapidly becoming. There used to be a big differentiation.
What job needs that?
Like modeler. Yeah, like the 3D modeling and rendering, that kind of thing.
Very few jobs, right?
But that's the point. In the old days, there was a clear distinction between a desktop computer and a desktop workstation. And I think workstations will persist, but desktop computers will largely disappear.
Desktop computers are basically already gone. I guess that some still exist, but really, no one makes a desktop computer that isn't ridiculously powerful.
Yeah, that isn't effectively a workstation. Every desktop I own is a workstation.
Yeah, there's no point for that. You know, the Mac. Look at the Mac Mini, right? I just said the price is dropping because who needs it? It is powerful, but it's like who's buying a Mac Mini these days unless you're using it for some cool thing, right?
Yep.
You're not.
Like, you know who's going to buy like 40 or 50 serious desktop workstations? A company making a television show and doing a lot of compositing and video work and animation and stuff like that. A game studio. I think we killed enough time. I'll just stop the show right there.